So thank you for joining me, Lordy.
Thanks. It's very exciting to be here.
So you
I'm
said
not
you have a YouTube channel.
Yes, and just before lockdown, I was filming a series called How to Be Creative at the End of the World, which was really good fun, recording interviews with a really wide range of artists and crafters. So it was quite funny. Unfortunately, a lot of the interviews are now redundant because obviously lockdown changed a lot of people's direction, and they might have not gone back to their creativity afterwards. So that was quite funny. It's a bit of a mishmash, my YouTube. I will be sorting it out at some point. So I've got bits of my art, and then of course it all started from when I was needle felting, and then I had a few little tutorials on there. So I've got needle felting tutorials.
What is
The
needle felting?
So you use a barbed wire to stab wool, and then the wool kind of tangles up, and you can either make little figurines, which is most commonly known. You can make little animals or something, Christmas decorations. But I was known for my portraits, and I did pet portraits for about 4 or 5 years, and that's where I got quite well known, and then I became more political and turned off some of the pet portrait lovers. They were like, "Oh, Sarah, we much preferred it when you did little Misty the cat. Why did you have to go political?" But it was way more fun for me, and I much prefer reptiles to furry animals anyway. So I couldn't I couldn't
Are,
really carry that.
is your reptile like a joke about the Twitters being or the turfs being dinosaurs, the dinosaur thing, or is it?
Oh no, I've just always preferred reptiles. They have like this inquisitive look, don't they? Like they're really clever. And
So what does that to do with your political shift, though? Why?
oh, I see. Well, I just mean I wasn't really loving the pet portraits because to
Okay.
do needle felted portraits in wool, obviously it was furry animals like cats and dogs. And actually, people would even send me their dead dog and cat fur in an envelope, and I would include that. And I was sometimes a bit like, oh, this is a little weird opening an envelope that said, sorry about the smell. So that was, but I did get very good at doing the pet portraits. And then, so it felt like I don't love dogs and cats. And to do pet portraits long term, you have to really be a big cat and dog lover.
Okay.
So that's what I mean. Nothing to do with reptiles per se. But after I'd been felting the pet portraits for a while, I created a triptych, so three giant portraits of well, I started with the portrait that's next to me here, which is a bit controversial, but I'll show it to you. I don't know if you saw it on my website. It's like up here on the wall.
Oh, the Trump one? I saw one. No, that's not the Trump one I saw, but I like that. I
I
saw a different
started with
Trump one.
that because in England, uh, you would call him a cock. Obviously, in America, it's a rooster, which doesn't necessarily work. So some people maybe didn't get the joke.
We still
And
no, we know that cock is a rooster, though.
and my idea behind it wasn't that it would be that obvious. It was kind of a pun because it looks like he's wearing a crown. So all the kids who saw it, they were like, "Oh, he's wearing a funny red crown." And then all the grown-ups were like, "Hee hee, we know that it's not really a crown." And I made that around the same time as that little clip that went viral of him pushing in front of people. Do you remember that? There was a crowd of people walking, like really eminent, and he just kind of strutted in front of them. So it was, you don't remember that clip?
I don't remember that. And to be honest, I ignored him as much as I could. And now I find him fascinating. But
It is funny that the running joke with my friends is, why are you so obsessed with Trump? I've done
I
two.
mean, I've shifted in my perception of him. I don't like him at all, but some part of me feels like he's some good is coming from his insanity. I don't know.
Well, I think it's quite funny to compare him to Biden, but I don't know enough about, I can't really get into a discussion about American politics. But when Biden got in, I was celebrating, and now I'm like, what was I thinking?
Oh, I've experienced that shift. I celebrated, and then when he took office, the first day he took office, he signed an executive order, two executive orders, one to transfer males to female prison and federal prison, and the other one eradicating sex-based rights in Title IX. And that shifted me immediately because I was like, what is going on? Because he was elected on a centrist mandate, like very much so a centrist mandate. And then he went and made choices that were antithetical to that. And so I was like, oh, something's off here. And
Yeah.
that's
Well,
what
I just
started
think
waking me up.
pardon?
Sorry?
I just think they're all too old.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of hysterical to watch them go at each other. Like during the debate season or like the end of the election, they were talking about how they would be able to beat each other up. It's like, what? Like Biden kept saying, I want to take him outside. It's like, I want to see them box.
Yeah, well, I was waiting for the Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg event of the year. But I don't know if that was ever serious. But we're going off track.
Sorry, I go ahead.
So I did that piece, and mostly, I think mostly I got support for that one. But then obviously I lost a few followers. I like to think there's a Venn diagram. There were the pet portrait lovers, and then there's the political, the people who align politically with me, and then there was the Venn diagram of the followers in the middle, who are the ones who've stuck with me. And after that piece, I did 3 giant portraits in wool of Putin, Kim Jong-un, and Trump. And I put live clothes moth larvae into the frames to eat their faces. And the triptych was called Pest, because the idea was, are the insects the pest or the people, and are the insects maybe representative of us rising up against this big power of Putin or whatever. And I was breeding clothes moth larvae in my cupboard when most people are desperate to get rid of them for 6 months. And I always say that's why I was single during that time, because it's such an odd hobby to have. But I love insects, so I was filming them, and they're so cute.
The larvae are cute.
They are. I tell you why. I find them really fascinating because two interesting things. So as they make their cocoon, their head pokes out at one end, and then they can go inside the cocoon, turn around, and then their head pokes out the other end. And they're like looking around, looking for wool to munch. And the other thing is that the cocoon changes color according to what they're eating. So on my portraits, the outside is all red. So I was hoping that as they ate all the red wool, it could look like drops of blood all over the whole portrait. Of course, what happened is I kept them alive for 6 months, and I put them in the portrait. I even gave them water and air and everything, and they all died. And they didn't eat the portraits at all, which is a real shame, since that was the concept. But it does mean that if anyone buys them, then their house is pretty safe. They're not going to get out and like infest your house or anything like that. And my joke is that none of them, nobody wanted to eat Trump's face, not even the clothes moth larvae.
That is really funny. That's really funny. So if they had stayed alive, you would have sold them with live larvae in them?
I didn't really think what would happen next. I had lots of I didn't expect them to die so quickly. I think they might have died because they
6
couldn't.
months is a long time.
They lived for 6 months in my cupboard.
Oh, okay.
Darkness. But of course, as soon as they were on display in an exhibition, there was nowhere for them to disappear. So it was too bright. And the other thing is the frames are double-sided, so you can see them on the back, and you had magnifying glasses to get to see them properly. What I could do in the future is put more clothes moth larvae in there and try again. Kind of hoping they'll sell before that. So anyway, so when I had those three pieces, I ended up in the Guardian, which was very exciting. And I guess they got me noticed. And I haven't looked back since. I always want to make political art. I don't necessarily just want to do commissions. The stories and the thoughts behind the art is almost so much more interesting to me than the object usually, like how someone comes to make something than the object itself.
Or the statement being made with something. Yeah, I absolutely agree. That's
Yeah.
interesting. And then this was before your journey into the gender. Were you, was it that at the time of the political shift, were you still kind of identifying as a gender queer artist?
Um, I so the way that all that I did the three portraits. I'd just come out of a long relationship, and I think it was all around the same time. I started because I'd come out of a long relationship. I started dating a range of different people and to explore my sexuality in a way I haven't really like my second adolescence or something like that. Wait, the signal's going a bit funny. Is it going funny for you?
No, I mean, you got a little choppy, but you came through audio clear
Okay, I
audio.
did slow. So after that relationship, I was like, oh, here's my chance to explore who I am a bit more and maybe date some women. And I went on to a sort of queer, I don't know how you feel about that word. Let's call it a queer dating site where there was a real range of people. Not real, but a range of people, uh, mostly butch lesbians and non-binary slash cross-dressing slash trans women, like a real. And I was like, well, these, I don't know, these people are not going to be dating each other. It was a very odd mixture. And I ended up dating a trans man. I don't know how you use these terms. And
Trans-identified
then,
female or trans man. So a woman.
yeah,
Okay.
female. And then I also dated a non-binary male who now identifies as a woman and a mother. And it was funny with the guy because at the time we were like, isn't it funny that people think they can change sex? How peculiar, you know? And I was saying I was genderqueer at the time, and he was saying he's non-binary, and we agreed on so many things. I do think he has some serious mental health issues that may or may not be part of all that. And then I also kind of fell for a cross-dressing man. So I went through a really crazy journey for uh, about a year. And then let me think. I started to look into taking testosterone because a local at the time, anyway, so I was dating all these people, and then there was the local man who was taking estrogen. This is quite funny actually, because I was the one telling everyone else that this person prefers she her pronouns. That's how much I was in that camp, let's say. um, and then they said to me, oh, I think every woman should try testosterone because I feel amazing taking estrogen. It's so interesting. It's like this crazy trip. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll look into taking testosterone, and I'll write a diary about my experience as sort of art diary. I'll film myself. Okay, let's say I was a bit naive at the time. I didn't know that there's plenty of people already doing that. I thought I would just take a touch, just a little little bit, and see if it made me more horny or more strong or whatever. And I started researching it and quickly came across the side effects. And I don't remember the exact moment, but I guess I rejoined Twitter, found out about detransitioners, got in touch with Laura, and just realized that there's no such thing as, hey, I'll just for the fun of it, I'll take some testosterone, and I won't worry about. I mean, now that I'm perimenopausal, I would like to have a little bit, but that's a whole different reason. So
I thought you would be taking estrogen if you're, I thought women were going through menopause were taking estrogen. They take testosterone?
yes, yes. So
Okay.
estrogen and progesterone, but also women's testosterone levels also drop. And it's quite funny that, well, it's just something that occurs to me sometimes because the NHS here will not prescribe, as far as I'm aware, testosterone to menopausal women. Normally they have to go privately. But if you say you're trans and you're 20, you get referred to a gender clinic and you can get testosterone, as far as I'm aware. Like, that doesn't make sense to me that it's so easy. It's not something I would do, but I have thought, oh, I could, what if I go to the GP and I say, oh, I really need some testosterone because I'm, feeling uncomfortable in my body, and it's not menopause, it's because I really feel like I should have more facial hair, or I don't know, it seems like a weird contradiction.
Yeah.
Like, when for the young women, they don't need the extra testosterone. Perhaps it makes you know, but whereas for women my age, the levels go down. Like, you can physically see that they need that put up to a certain level.
So then you started figuring things out about what's actually going on with the gender stuff on Twitter is where you started researching it when you decided kind of to shift.
Yeah, I mean, I think because I was around a lot of uh, gender, I don't know, I want to use the word queer. I know some people, it's really hard to.
Well, I think you should speak within the world you were at the time. So if that's the terms you were using, then that's fine. I think people understand where you are now.
Yeah, so I haven't met anyone my age who's been on this crazy journey. So I was, I dated this trans man, this non-binary male, and then the cross-dresser, and then there was the local trans woman, and then there was another trans woman who, or trans identifying male, who I became very friendly with, and certain things happen that I don't feel comfortable sharing, but let's just say that I saw them nude and I was like, yeah, but what makes you're still a woman, but in front of me is a naked male. And where does the woman start and end? Like, this is all of it, like, messing with my mind. And then I have a daughter, so I also looked at her and I thought, well, I'm saying I'm genderqueer, and I'm using that term to escape the idea that I'm a woman, but I want her to love being a woman and to think she doesn't have to pretend she's not a woman. So I need to just exist. I need to be a sort of a role model, like the role model that I feel I didn't really have when I was growing up, of like a badass badass woman who doesn't care if people comment on their armpit hair, or if they want to chop. I always say chopping trees. It's like, be a woman with hairy armpits who chops trees and has a bald, a shaved head, and doesn't give a shit about the stereotypes, and you're still a woman. And you have no kids, and you can still be that doesn't stop you being a woman. um the people who I idolized as a teenager were cross-dressing men, because they were going against the gendered norms, like Frankenfurter, in the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
That was my first big crush, I think, from age 12 or 13, which is maybe, I don't know how, if that's unusual or not,
Do
but
you
they were.
think that was, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go.
Do you think that your attraction to that was because you wanted freedom to masculine, like be a masculine female? And so you were attracted to men, like more feminized men, because you felt like that gave you room to play the more masculine role?
Yeah, maybe. I do tend to date quite soft, sweet, not macho men now, I suppose. Um, Perhaps I'm a bit not forceful is the right word. Um, well, when I was a teenager, I really wanted to be a boy. That's another reason I got into doing my art series. I was in a girls' school and I tried a boy's name and I wanted my friends to call me by a boy's name. And I know for me, it was not about sexuality. It was just being brought up to think life is better for guys and sex is better for guys and having a penis is great fun, more fun than anything we have. Um, the idea of periods is gross and annoying, and men dominate the world. So why would I want to be a woman? And so I do wonder, like I'm 45, I do wonder how things might have been different if this had been around. I mean, I went to art school, so nowadays there's probably a gender office in every art school where you can talk to a counselor and get referred without your parents knowing anything. So I wonder, I mean, I can't say for sure, but I would have been very tempted down that route.
At a young age when you were more impressionable.
Yeah, I mean, I cut my hair really short when I was about 14 and in a girls' school where being kind of Amazonian, feminine, big breasted, like the ones who were more advanced in puberty, let's put it that way, they were the ones who were celebrated, but the awkward, flat chested, short haired girls were not. And, you know, being called a lesbian was used to bully people. Like, ew, you know, there were these silly things like they accused some of the girls of being lesbians, and then if one of the girls touched you, it'll be like, oh, you touched me, like this.
Okay.
It was pretty awful and
This was at an
sad.
all-girls school.
Yep. Yeah, in the 90s. And I can't. The funny thing is that even now, as far as I'm aware, being a lesbian, maybe in an all-girls school, is still not seen as something people admit to, as far as I'm aware. And even then, in an all-girls school, it was like seen as gross. It's yeah, it's really.
It's crazy how we've done a 180 on that, and now it's cooler. And we have people pretending to be, or young people pretending to be gay, essentially, or claiming bisexuality when they're actually straight because it's cooler to be part of the alphabet crew.
I was told by a mum that her daughter was bullied for being straight, and that the main trans identifying teenager was bullying her and saying, come on, admit it already, admit that you're also trans. And that put that girl in a really difficult. I was like, kids are being bullied for being straight. Like that definitely didn't. That was not the case when I was. That was not the case. That's really,
No,
that is strange to me. And of course, our flag, not our flag, because I suppose I'm on some level bisexual, but the straight flag is black, white, and grey. It's the most boring one.
why these flags are so stupid, but yeah, because all straight people just see things in black and white, essentially,
Yeah,
according to this ideology.
yeah. It's there's more flags all the time, aren't there? Have you seen there's a flag that's Shreddy Gender that's got two cats on it? Like,
That's what?
you know, Schrodinger's theory of the box, the cat in the box. And the
Okay.
Schrodinger's theory is that there's a cat in a box, and in any moment, the cat is alive and dead because you don't know if the cat is alive or dead in the box. So there is a gender identity that is called Shreddy Gender. Of course, there is.
Because they don't know whether the person's alive or dead? Like,
No,
what?
I don't really know. I haven't looked it up. I think it's like you both identify as a gender and you also don't in the same moment.
Okay.
I don't know. It could be something like that. You mean you don't understand?
Oh my God, this world. All
It
because
was,
of Tumblr, right? There's a lot of the stuff started on the Tumblr verse.
Yeah, I've never really used Tumblr, but
Neither have I.
I'm too old for that.
I know one of your TikTok videos went kind of viral though, where you were like day whatever of being a girl or putting makeup on or something, and
Oh
I
yeah,
saw it a while back.
Days of Womanhood. So I really I suppose the tricky thing is it was not meant to be directed at anyone in particular. I just thought, hey, that name is available. That's kind of cool. I can say Days of Womanhood and what it's like for me to be a woman. Um, yeah, so it was the one where I said I'm having an existential crisis because I'm not wearing makeup and am I still a woman? And the sad thing is I really love, not the sad thing, it showed me how much I love comedy. So I've been studying comedy and dabbling in a bit of ventriloquism.
Oh,
I hope that makes me a cool mum. I think it makes me a cool mum.
so
um,
do you have a puppet? Like,
I do
have
feel
you
like
learned to speak without moving your lips?
there is a little video on my Instagram. My puppet's called Gender Brenda. I can do it. I can do it a bit, but not well enough yet. But I'm beginning to think that if I do comedy, I won't make it all about gender because I don't want to. I want to be able to diversify and not be typecast. I think so. I'm thinking of focusing on things to do with the body and celebrating all the weird the fact that everyone's body is weird in some way and we don't recognize that fact. You know, it's the anti-filter. Maybe I should call it anti-filter bodies or something like that. Oh, I went all the weird and I wonder what's up with my internet.
You're
Um,
coming through fine for me.
Oh, okay, okay. So I've been digging deep into the whole like me and gender and what's it all about and why do I feel so uncomfortable being female and I have a lot of health issues related to my female anatomy, like gynecological and in terms of the like pregnancy and things like that. And I think trying to not celebrate. I don't want to be like toxic positivity, like, oh, you should love the fact that you have wonky boobs. Like, love it. Yay. Let's recognize that some people have wonky boobs and it's okay. I want people to be okay about that, not deny um, that they might feel a bit weird about it. But, you know, celebrate everyone's weird body. I was thinking of doing a TikTok series, but it's a bit vicious on there, so we'll have to see see if
Well,
that's where.
you're brave for at least staying on. Honestly, TikTok scares the crap out of me, so I understand not going on there. But um crap, I lost my train of thought. And that was really, I think what you're saying, it makes a lot of like not celebrating that. Like, I feel like strictly celebrating flaw kind of prevents you from being honest with yourself about it. And that it's okay to feel weird about something weird about like that's perceived to be weird about you versus strictly just celebrating it. What you're saying about the wonky boobs.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so in my family, I've always felt like, oh, here's a funny example. I've always been told I've got really small ears. And then if you tell that to an impressionable teenager, they will get so self-conscious even if someone says, haven't you got really cute small ears? And it's like, just don't notice them. Just don't comment on the size of my ears. It's as bad as saying, haven't you got fantastic large ears? Like, just, you don't even have to speak about, you know, positively or negatively. But why don't we just, maybe I can make something humorous where they're just ears and maybe small ears are practical or does that make sense? I think it makes sense.
Yeah, you're making sense to me. And it is interesting because when you're young, you just want to fit in everything. Like you want your ears to be like everyone else's ears versus any abnormality, even if it is cute.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's why I've been trying to think, well, I can't persuade, like the hardest thing in all of this is persuading someone, an unhappy teenage girl that the answer is not adopting a non-binary identity, but to like, oh, you're okay being a butch lesbian, it's fine. I Someone once said to me, I'm too old to be inspiring teenagers, so fine. But I think focusing on how can we accept, be okay with discomfort. That's what's missing. If someone's uncomfortable about having breasts right now, the idea is, oh, well, you can just get a binder, you can have surgery and all of this. But what if there was a different way of approaching your body and how you feel about your body? Like, I have had to go on such a journey to be okay with my, let's say, my flaws. And it doesn't mean that you have to love them, like, oh, I just love I'm not going to go into detail, but I just love this one part of myself that really makes me feel cringy or whatever. One of the ideas I've had is, if you take your least favorite body part and treat it like your pet, and you like groom it, give it a pet name, give it a snack now and then, and try and care about it. You don't have to put it on a pedestal, although some people do that with their pets. Anyway, I have to admit, I'm approaching the doctor about getting an ADHD diagnosis, because I think I can be a bit hyper, and my thought process goes a bit all over the place.
Well, you're in good company because I'm ADHD. I have ADHD, so
Okay.
you're okay with me. And I
Yeah.
follow those thought patterns better than people that are super linear anyway, because I kind of think in a circle.
Oh, okay. I think more like a firework, like, oh, there's that idea and there's that idea. And then I've had people stop conversations and say, why are you talking about hats now when we were just talking about baked beans? And I'm like, because baked beans, this, and now hats. It
It
makes
makes
sense.
perfect sense. It makes perfect sense to me. But I find, or sometimes I'm having a conversation in my head and then I'll kind of continue it out loud. And then people are like, what? Where did that come from? I'm like, well, I was thinking this because you said this and this and this and this, and I got here.
Yeah, exactly. That definitely happens to me. Or people, I know that some people, I have to, I don't know if you do this, but sometimes if I'm a bit overexcited, I feel like I have to warn people and say, have you got the energy to talk to me right now? Because I think if someone else is having a low energy day and I'm in a really great, like, buzzing mood, they could be more like, I can't handle Sarah right now. I mean, I must admit, I'm not in this kind of mood very often. It's only because we're talking, and I don't get to talk to many adults about topics that I love. I'm trying, what, I've just made the decision to have phone calls with people more often, not just Twitter or WhatsApp, because over lockdown I had some fantastic 1 hour conversations with people on an actual phone, when before lockdown people just didn't phone each other and talk. So yesterday I spoke to a detransitioner, and I am starting to have like Zoom chats with people from my art series, and I can't necessarily support people like a therapist would, but I've got their back. Like, I can be there in some capacity, and I feel like they know that I am very empathetic, and I know quite a lot about. I like to think I know quite a lot. So
About the gender stuff, or just in general, like general knowledge.
life, all the difficulties with being a woman, and I don't know. Maybe I could be like a cool aunt character.
That seems to be my role in life. I have another niece. I have now three nieces and a nephew, but my niece was just born. So I'm very
Oh,
excited to be the cool aunt that lives close by now, because I've been living away from them forever.
so you haven't got your own kids?
No, I doubt that's going to happen. I'd like to, but I'm 36 and single, and I feel allergic to relationships. So
Have you looked at dating apps at all? Because they're quite
I did.
generic.
I mean, I was in a relationship forever, like over and over again. I was kind of a serial monogamous, not intentionally, just kind of happened. And I never allowed myself to be single. And now I'm third, like, so I decided to take a year off dating at 30, before I turned 35. And now I'm just really happy. Not like, I mean, not, I have my issues and stuff and whatever. Um, but I have a sense of strength and peace that I don't think I've had before. And I'm really reluctant to try to give it up. And I think part of it is me being afraid of like losing myself in a relationship and being heartbroken, things like that. But I think the other part is just I really like being alone.
It's very
I don't know.
easy to rely on the other person to sort of validate you. If
Yeah.
you, especially, yeah, so many complicated things happen, don't they? Like you pretend to like things that you don't like that much just to compromise. And before you
Well,
know it,
yeah. I felt like I was always making myself into something I wasn't in a way, like taking on part of my partner's identity.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I've never really had my own.
no, I get that. I get that.
And I think there's something natural about that. Like you grow together, but then the other aspect is, I mean, I think it was a bit of both for me. Like I'm sure they did it too. I think that's a natural thing in a relationship is like you sort of grow together, but sometimes I think I was hiding in someone else's identity a little bit.
Yeah, it's very difficult to find the be yourself, but also compromise or something. I haven't quite found that balance myself.
I think it's really important for people to be single for a bit in their life and really stand on their own 2 feet. Because I feel like, I mean, from when I was 16 to 34, I was kind of always in a relationship. And when I wasn't in a relationship, I was in a best friend relationship. Does that make sense? Where I like had one person that I was my best friend. And I feel like how would I figure out who I really am? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I haven't settled on exactly who I am yet. I feel like most of the this is where I also feel like a bit of an outlier, and it's probably just because I'm a creative spirit. But the mums who I am surrounded by are so settled into their identity and what they like and what kind of hairstyle they have and what they like wearing and what they like doing. And I look, this is why I wonder about the ADHD. I don't know if it's related or is it creativity. But I mean, the one thing that's staying is my blue hair. But I went through a phase of wearing kind of retro 1950s dresses. But now I don't feel like wearing dresses so much. So I've just ordered some shirts and I might go with a waistcoat and a shirt, maybe a tie. I really like the idea of playing with, you know, today I'm going to wear a dress, a fabulous dress with a petticoat and some heels. And then the next day I'll wear a shirt and a tie and a jacket and maybe no makeup. But I don't need to call that gender fluid. I can just, and when I said I was genderqueer, I did somehow, and this is going to sound this is why I feel like I've got some understanding. It's like you feel like, oh, I'm going to have a masculine day where I don't wear makeup. And I know it's bullshit, but you feel like I'm going to have a powerful day where I'm not going to wear makeup and I'm just going to walk around like feeling tough. And then you have like, oh yeah, I mean, I always feel like quite confident. I would never wear a dress and then have a fan and go around going, oh, like that, like being sort of stereotypically girly or whatever
Yeah.
I'm not.
I mean, the fan takes it a little, like that's like what, the 1930s,
The funny,
1920s?
the funny thing is that when I wear a dress, and I don't know if this is because of my body shape or what it is, when I wear a dress, even if I wear a petticoat, I feel so awkward in a dress that it absolutely feels like a weird costume, like I'm on a stage, rather than an everyday kind of, oh, I'm just going to chuck on a dress. I have to be in completely the right mindset. And the funniest thing is, I have a dress that a local, when I used to live in another town, a local drag queen has the same dress, which I thought was hilarious that I've, especially considering my background. And I did think to myself, like, that's interesting that they've chosen to wear the same. It's like a neon pink dress with black flamingos or surfers. I don't know.
Well, that
It's
kind of
like,
makes sense because it's very loudly female, I guess.
yeah. And then I wear dresses like that sometimes because I'm almost, I don't know how to be a, what's the word? Like, I play with the stereotypes. I'm like, well, I think that wearing these ridiculous dresses is a little ridiculous. So I'm going to have fun with that. And I'm going to wear the most ridiculous dress uh, because why not? Because these dresses exist. And then I like playing with these extremes. And it is funny that I do follow a few artists who, of course, call themselves non-binary or genderqueer or whatever it is. And I think, well, what do you really, you're doing the same as me, like you're having your I feel tough in a shirt day. Maybe they, maybe they do something with their face or slick their hair down. And then they have their days where they wear a dress. Why do they need to say or validate their expression with a new label? Isn't it more, I think it's more empowering to be like, I'm a woman and one
Absolutely.
to wear a shirt and a suit.
Yeah,
And I
it's way more
actually,
empowering.
yeah, I actually have issues with the whole concept of masculine and feminine, and I know where it comes from. And the last podcast interview I did, we went into the whole everyone has both in themselves and all this. But what I hate the most is that feminine, that the words are so loaded that that's where things are like, I think I'm not wrong in saying that masculine is on a higher, seen as a higher level. There's masculine man, and then there's, let's say, a masculine woman. If they're too masculine, it's probably not acceptable. And then there's feminine man, which is not seen as, and then there's feminine woman, tick, feminine man, no tick. And because those terms of feminine and masculine are so loaded, that's what's creating this mess, I think.
Well, and it's just really disrespectful to women to be like a feminine man is lesser than, because then it's like, oh, someone like a female, like a man who's too much like a woman is somehow lesser
Yeah.
than.
Yes, and actually, yeah, totally. And I mean, the saddest thing for me out of all of this, not the saddest thing, there's so many sad things, but I'm looking at dating, and I would love to find a, let's say, gender non-conforming man who wears a bit of eyeliner and is very confident wearing a skirt some days and a pink whatever. I know I'm going for all the stupid stereotypes, but a man who plays around and will wear a skirt or will wear trousers and has maybe got long hair and has, maybe a musician, if there's anyone watching, but doesn't say they're not a man. But I can't find anyone like
Now
that.
that's
And
going to be
maybe,
close to impossible now.
maybe 10 years ago, it would have been.
Yeah.
When I was at art college, well, I don't know if guys then really wore eyeliner. I think they might have done. I think I just missed that sort of 80s, 90s moment. But it just makes me yeah, a bit sad that I think we're going backwards instead of, and the other thing I don't like is that as soon as a man wears a dress now, he gets dismissed by a lot of women. Oh, you're just being a fetishist. So then some men are less likely to try and play around with expressing themselves in different ways because they don't want to be seen as one of, it's
I
I
mean,
mean,
yeah, I would be less inclined to date a gender non-conforming man now because I mean, if I got to know them and knew that they call themselves, they knew that they were a man and stuff, I might be more open to it. But just on the surface level, like I wouldn't swipe, what is it, swipe left or swipe I wouldn't, is left the good swipe? Swipe right? I can't remember.
Right is the one you like.
Okay, I wouldn't swipe right. Like if I met them in person and realized that they were okay as a man, then I'd be more open to it. But like on the surface, like I would not be interested in all in a gender nonconforming man because I would think that they would think they're a woman or non-binary or be captured by this ideology.
Yeah. Well, on the dating app that I'm on, most people declare their pronouns, and there was a non-binary male who's appeared a few times, like when I've been on the app, and I did write to them. Let's say them. I wrote to them and I said, "Oh, you sound so perfect." But I left my genderqueer days behind, and I'm actually looking for a man. I mean, they haven't replied. But I thought that was a really friendly way of saying, I don't know what they would have thought about that, but I thought it was kind of an interesting way of pointing out, like, they say they're not a man, but they're male, I think. I don't know. I thought it was kind of a clever thing, but obviously they didn't contact me.
Well, I mean, they probably are a little too attached to their they them, or who knows.
I never
But
checked. Yeah, I
I
never
think that
checked.
it's good that you put yourself out there in an open way. Like you gave them space to respond, and so you can only control what you do.
Yeah, and maybe I made them think a little bit. I
I'm
don't know.
curious, what's your dating app that you use? Is that okay
Oh,
for me?
yeah. Well, I'm on Bumble. It's called Bumble, and it's the one where the woman messages the other person
Yeah,
first.
I used Bumble for a little bit.
And then I'm on Hinge, but that's not getting me anywhere. I just don't know why. Um, but it's very difficult for me to find someone who is quirky in an appealing way. Like I am not the kind of woman who wants to go and sit in a pub and like every Friday night or every Saturday night go and sit in a pub. Like I would much rather go and play mini golf, or I really want to do sand kiting. It's called, on a really. I want to try it. Like I want an active date where you you compete and you do stuff together or go and play pool. And most people I find around my age, they're like, oh, yeah, I did all that in my 20s or when I was a student. And now I'm really happy to sit at home and watch Netflix. I mean, there must be guys or, or women, men or women my age who still want to go and have adventures and try unicycling naked, maybe not naked, just unicycling. As soon as I said
I
it, I
feel
was
like biking naked for a guy might be a little dangerous. I don't know. I could
like,
understand them
for
not
a
wanting to do that.
woman.
Well, I mean, just because the penis by the chain, I don't know. Like if they fall off, I feel like it could be more drastic.
I don't know, but I yeah, there must be some people who still have a bit of energy. I mean, I'm chatting to someone who's in a roller derby, and he only just joined, and I think that is cool.
That is
That's
cool.
un that's unusual for a guy to to do that and to be up for that and not mind not be too set in their ways. I used to say that I want to settle up, I don't want to settle down, you know.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I want to have more adventures with whoever I don't want to say end up with, but I want to have more adventures. I'm not looking to find someone to sit on the sofa with when there's a whole world to explore. I mean, of course, it's a bit tricky for me because I've got two kids and I'm homeschooling them. Um,
Good for
so
you.
I can't
And
do.
as a single, I can't, I don't know how you do that as a single parent. I guess your art does well enough. That's amazing.
Oh, I get support from their dad and family and from
Okay.
other. It does work well that I can take time out to record a podcast or do some drawing and that kind of thing. But I do feel like being a mum, I'm a bit more wary about. I'm speaking out, but I have to, like, for example, the TikTok series. I think, oh, my kids might be on there sometime, and I want to protect them, but then I also want to make a difference for them and their future. It's a really tricky balancing act.
Yeah, and protecting them is key because you see people doxing and going, I mean, like what happened to that Indian mother who was simply speaking about Jeffrey,
Marsh,
what's his, yes.
Marsh.
Like you have to be mindful of the safety of your children too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like I tread a delicate path in the middle of all of this because I have people in my art series who still have close connections with the trans community. And I don't share things on Twitter that are mocking. I don't feel like so my TikTok series, I don't feel it was mocking a person. I think it was mocking the stereotypes of what it means to be a woman. And it kind of is funny to me that people made a connection with a certain person rather than realizing it's about makeup. And I put the rubbish out as a woman, and I had a big dress on with a petticoat, and I was spinning and being very like
Girly.
this is yeah girly, which has nothing to do with being a woman. Um, so I've totally lost my train of thought. I don't know what I was saying.
Well, you were talking about how you're mindful about not being a bully, not making fun of certain like
Yeah,
a specific person, but more criticizing or critiquing or making poking fun at the ideology.
yeah. So I'm always raising questions rather than saying, "Oh, you're what nonsense! You're just an idiot for thinking that." I'm actually I have a really curious mind. So I think, as I mentioned, I fell in love with a cross dresser, and then I had a very close friend who was also a cross dresser, and I just asked questions. And I know that in the sort of more radical feminist world, they're just dismissed like, ooh, weird pervert. We don't want to have anything to do with you. But I want to know, like, so how did it begin? And how does it make you feel? And what's it like being you? And have you thought about wearing a fluffy pink jumper in everyday life? Like, just wear it when you're out? Is it like, where's the line? Is it really two personas? What's it all about? Um, that kind of thing. I mean, I haven't done it in a while, but I like wearing a mustache, like a real hair mustache. And that has been my profile picture on some of my social media before. And I have considered, like, am I think it's auto androphile? Like, do I get off on seeing myself as a man? And I have gone to parties with certain attachments presenting as a bit more of a male.
You
I'm
mean
not,
physical attachments? Like,
yes, I'm going to go into detail.
okay.
Um,
Well, I mean, I wasn't sure if you mean like emotional attachments or like actual. I think I understand what they are. Yeah.
attire. And yeah, and so I have thought to myself, like, what is it about that is it a fetish? Is it just adopting a role? Like all the roles that I've played in plays at school, I was given a male part to play.
Interesting.
And so that's made me think that if someone had said to me, well, that's because you seem so masculine and you should have been a man. If someone had said that to me often enough, I could have been like, oh, it makes sense. I was misgendered or missexed, I call it, as a teenager. When I had short hair, I had people thinking I was a boy. I was only given male roles. I never fitted in with other girls. So it makes sense that I'm just wrong as a woman, as a girl.
Oh, so
Uh,
these were at all girls' schools that you were given male role, right?
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
okay.
So I was clearly like one of the less feminine. It's funny because when people meet me now, they're like, "Oh, but Sarah, you're so feminine," and they don't realize that that makes me feel really uncomfortable. And I think that's my like internalized misogyny, that I don't want people to say I'm feminine because I'm still processing that that's not negative. It's just a fact. but in society saying, oh,
No, it's
it sounds,
negative. I mean, yeah, feminine men are looked down on. Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying or why
it
you'd
makes,
react that way.
yeah, it makes it sound like they're saying, oh, you're so delicate and weak, you're so cute, like a little delicate lady. Whereas if someone says, like my dad complimented I don't have any muscles really, but he was like, you're quite built, Sarah. And I was like, yeah, not at all. But he obviously thought that I don't have
Thin
thin bones.
arms, you're
I
you're
have thin.
jacked. I used to have more muscle, but my arms died, but they work, so I'm good with that. As long as they work.
Yeah. So I'm still processing how I feel about being a woman, but I definitely know that I want I want to sort of inspire people to like you can say you're a woman and still play around with all the gender extremes. Like I've shit and actually it seems like a bit of a nonsense to me. Like one of the things I keep asking on Twitter is what is it about a trans woman and me, a female woman, that what makes us both women? And I'm constantly asked, like
I
every
see
six,
your posts like that. I've seen your tweets like that.
I haven't had an
Say that.
answer. I haven't had an answer.
No, of
Um,
course not.
and you know those questions, people don't like that question. Um, but you know, if you put us both in a room and we could be sitting together naked, and that's a really weird thought experiment. But let's say I'm sitting naked in a room with a trans woman. I don't know why I have to be naked, but I just feel I
Well, you're
like
both
these.
in a locker room or something.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, what is it about that person that they feel this on some level the same as me? Like, um, yeah, and then the other thought experiment I really like is if you got an island with just all men or all women, and they had never met the opposite sex, what would it emerge? Like, there wouldn't be the concept of a man who feels like they're a woman. There would just be very feminine, not feminine, delicate, soft. I don't want to. I'm. There would be just a range of men on their island with different personalities and different. You know, some speak loudly, some speak softly. One is better at making fire. One is better at making houses, and this whole concept wouldn't exist. I mean, it can't happen, but it's just my thought experiment.
So, like, what would happen to gender constructs if there was all the same sex categories on one island?
Yeah, exactly. Because you know, there's the whole saying it's oh, gender is a well, there's the two arguments out there. There's the feminist argument that it's a social construct, and then there's the gendered soul, um, which actually other people say is just personality, isn't it? At the end of the day. And what the problem is, if your personality, if you're a softly spoken man, is at odds with what society thinks a man should be, and if your upbringing, like in my detransition portrait series, a lot of the women are saying that they didn't tick the right woman boxes, which is exactly how I felt as a teenager. I didn't tick the right boxes. Like I didn't really want to learn to cook for my husband. I didn't necessarily want to have long hair, wear heels. Nylon tights are like torture to me. I can't stand the feeling.
So
But
you've said this a few times about dresses making you uncomfortable, nylon tights. What was this? So why did you go into that 50s sort of rockabilly like dress look for so long? Or for what was that? Because it seems like it goes against who you are for the most part normally. So I'm curious as why you decided to wear those dresses for a period of time.
well, I do. I mean, I love Americana and kitsch, and I feel like those dresses are like me being a bit of a clown,
Okay.
uh, which is funny because I suppose some people would say, "Oh, you look fabulous in those dresses," and they're kind of. I mean, my dresses are pretty silly. Like they'll have dinosaurs on them or space, or I don't wear them to look beautiful and elegant. I wear them because they're just funny funny things to wear. I always say that, so I studied children's TV presenting, and I always want to be taken seriously, but my style is always kids TV presenter.
How do you study children's TV presenting? That is so specific.
Well, I went to like film school, and then we could do a
Okay.
TV presenting course, and then as part of that, we had to do one of those demos where you're talking to one camera and showing another camera what you've made. So here's, here's one I made earlier. And if you want to make one of these plastic bottles, you just have to go into the kitchen, and then we're going to make a rocket, or whatever it is. And then we have a kids TV show called Art Attack, and I did work experience on that TV show. Anyone British will know what that show
That's
is.
very cool.
And I wanted to be a kids TV presenter for a long time, and then I realized that those people they're not around children. They just have to get up at 6 a.m, probably take some cocaine or something, and look really hyperactive and excited about little Jimmy's birthday at 6 a.m, and they probably don't give a shit.
Well, you
And
can sort of still do that with your YouTube, though. Like you could explore that because you have that channel now.
well, that's where the ventriloquism comes
Yeah.
into it. But actually, what I find really interesting is the juxtaposition between, let's say, naive art forms like ventriloquism, combining them with something quite adult. So when I was at art school, I did an animation piece about sadism, and animation is normally seen as, cartoons and very much for kids. I mean, this was 25 years ago, so things like South Park and all the stuff that we see
And the
now
Adult Swim sort of, yeah, I know what you're saying.
didn't exist. Like
Yeah.
I didn't see stuff, I didn't see adult animations. There was no Netflix or anything. So it felt quite unusual to do that kind of thing at the time. And yeah, and I really find that I don't know if it's cognitive dissonance, but the sort of contrast is so interesting to me, that you could have a really cute puppet and it's swearing and being like talking about sex. Like,
Yeah, and like a juxtaposition.
yeah, unfortunately, when I did my Gender Brenda skit, people they thought I was promoting gender ideology.
Oh,
Um,
they didn't sniff the satire.
and actually, yeah, yeah, and they were like, oh, F off with you're not indoctrinating my children with that nonsense. And I was like, you don't get it, you don't get it. And this is another reason I'm keeping my blue hair, because I think it's quite amusing to confuse people, like, oh, but you have, I mean, it's not easy because I see so
Because the
many,
blue hair is such a signal now. Or
I see,
like the colorful hair is a very big gender non-binary signal.
yeah, I see so many insults on Twitter all the time about idiots with blue hair. And then I have to think to myself, instead of thinking you're right, I'll just go gray because I'm pretty gray underneath. It should spur me on even more, because the more people who challenge the stereotypes, like, the better. I think it's great if someone. So recently, I've told a few people about my art series, on the bus or the train, and they've got confused about exactly what my stance is and what my work is all about. So they think that I'm doing a series on trans people, and then it's actually a really great sort of, so they warm up and we have this chat, and I say, oh, actually I'm highlighting some of the issues around this, and by then it's not that it's like I think I've opened up people's eyes, because at first they think that I'm going to be all about this, and then I'm like, well, actually there's this whole other thing, and quite often they don't even know about the some of the things that I'm highlighting.
So what got you started in doing the detransition series, the 100 portraits, and how far along are you as well? I want to know, like, how many portraits have you released so far?
I've just finished number 49 today, so hopefully that's going online this evening. Um, it's taken me a year and a half to get to 49, but
I mean,
uh,
it's a lot of work, especially with oils. Takes more time.
oh, I did the first 30 were in oils. Now I'm doing pencil and watercolor.
Oh,
And I'm
okay.
considering needle felting again because that's like my thing, I guess. So I got in touch with Laura Becker, and she said, oh, she's got these photos from a detransition camp and she doesn't know what to do with the photos. So then I had a chat with her and I said, oh, I really want to do something. I think that the way that detransitioners are treated is horrendous. And I always want to speak up for I was going to say the little guy, but the people who don't get, who,
Give a voice to the voiceless.
yeah. So my whole life, I've been told to be quiet and not share my opinion. And the right way to behave is to not start an argument, not challenge people. And I'm quite a loud, expressive person, so that's been very frustrating to me. And I think if someone's got something important to say, you know, um, they should have that opportunity. So I spoke to Laura, and then I thought, well, what can I do? What can I do? And someone once said to me that with art, you have to go big to get noticed. And I thought, well, I can't make a giant artwork because I haven't got the space, but I can do a large number. To me, 100 is a large number. And I have had one person on Twitter, a trans activist guy, say, "Oh, that's hardly any. You think that I can't believe she's only found 45 people to paint. Can't be a big problem." I think that even one person being let down by the system shows there's a problem. Um, and I think we're just at the beginning of a wave of all the detransitioners. I think we're just at the beginning of it. I'm just gonna have a sip of water.
So, so the reason you've had only 49 is because you've only found 49 subjects? I would have, I mean, I feel like there would be a lot more to choose from, or is it because do you think that it's just people not willing to put their faces out there?
Well, interestingly, well, I have had a few more people. I have had two people drop out who I have painted and drawn.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Um, it's okay. Gradually, as I started, I realized that some of the participants are still dealing with quite serious mental health issues. So I had to be sure that they were. So people have to be in the right place psychologically to take part. They have to be okay with their face being out there. Um, Sometimes they're still exploring, so they're not ready. And it's a scary thing to do. There are people who are just privately detransitioning because they are so like they're aware of the backlash of all of it. And then there are people who would detransition, but they've gone too far into physically changing. They feel like they can't. Like Scott Nugent, for example, who can't present as a woman any.
Yeah.
any. Um, so I have had more than 49 contact me, but I'm not like inundated because it's such um, tricky, a tricky thing to be that vulnerable. I think it's very tricky. Um, I here's another, and there's stigma. Like I'm going to be really upfront now. I've got herpes, and there's a lot of stigma around that, and not a lot of people want to go on record and shout about it to the world. And even if they can debunk a lot of the stigma around it, it's a lot of effort to be the one. It's a lot of effort for the detransitioners to stand up and say, you know what, I'm going to talk about this. There might be some backlash. Friends and family might not know. I might get a lot of hate. I think it's really difficult. Um, yeah, I think it's a difficult thing to do. And
I, yeah.
yeah,
I really respect you and appreciate the fact that you are that their mental well-being is a part of the decision making, because I feel like a lot of people could not care about that and just use these stories for their personal gain. And I think it's really important that you are protecting those that might be too vulnerable to put themselves out there.
Yeah, I try. And the other thing is that I feel like my approach is different to, let's say, a podcast or an article with a journalist, especially because everything I share is their own words, and I do not um, ask them like a load of questions. I had the most recent portrait. She just said, "I'm finally free," and that's all she said. And part of me was like, oh, it would be nice if she shared more of her story, but she doesn't want to, and I respect that, and that's so important to me. Um, I went to the GenSpect conference in Ireland earlier this year, and there were some discussions about how journalists can exploit the detransitioners for their agenda and that kind of thing. And I'm very careful not to have some kind of explicit agenda like, oh my god, it's so shocking, or I just want to share information about how people end up where they are, in a nutshell. And these stories are so interesting, and the fact that some of them are very relatable. And yeah, so in a nutshell, I just think I'm giving a platform. They can say what they like. I'm not trying to use them to gain an end goal. I think that would be, I mean, on the one thing I want to achieve with my art series is to say it's okay to be this kind of woman, because I have women in my series with beards, facial hair, shaved head. Uh, sometimes these like butch lesbians are not that visible anymore. Maybe certainly they're not cast in Netflix series as butch lesbians, as far as I'm aware. I might be wrong, but to say, this is a whole range of women who felt like it wasn't okay to be this kind of woman, and it's totally fine to be that kind of woman. That's and I know I probably am projecting, because I didn't feel like anyone accepted me as being that kind of woman when I was a teenager.
You're not
uh,
projecting, you're relating.
Relating
Because
then, okay.
yeah, because I think you're spot on. So I think you're empathizing.
Yeah, I definitely a lot of the stories, like one of them, the thing that I always come back to. I don't know how long you want to talk, by the way.
I mean, I don't really know where we're at. Uh, only an hour and a half. We can talk for a bit more.
Okay.
I mean, so I feel like 2 hours is usually the limit I try to set, because I don't know how many people are going to listen to over 2 hours,
Yeah,
um,
it's
but I'm enjoying listening to you.
you're not going for a Benjamin Boyce then of like 3 to 4 hours or
Oh,
something.
I just actually interviewed with him. I was a guest on his channel. I don't know when it's going to be out, but that's funny you brought him up.
Oh, I'm still waiting, Benjamin, if you're watching this. When I saw him at GenSpect, I gave him a hug, even though I've never met him, just because I felt like I knew him.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Has he asked to have you on before? I'm sure he'd love to have you on if you even mention it to him.
a
I did
pleasure.
this really ADHD thing of like I was prepping for my interview with Exelancic, and I watched an episode that he did with her, and they talked about vocal tension, and he was like, I find my voice getting strained, and I was like, I know how to fix that. And I sent him this like long message on Twitter. I was like, talking about alignment and vocal posturing, and how to posture your larynx so you don't have muscle fatigue and tension. And he was like, "Do you want to come on my channel and talk about that?" And then we didn't end up hardly talking about it at all. But that was a very ADHD moment where I was like, if I don't tell this to him right now, it's going to be on my mind all day, like a hyper focus.
Yeah, I feel like I have to let people. Is it an ADHD thing that if someone's got something in their teeth, you have to tell them, otherwise you can't focus on what they're saying?
I mean, I think it might be. I know that I would I feel guilt and shame if I don't tell someone if they have food in their teeth, though, and it would be a thumb, it would be like a guilt. I mean, that could be just Catholic guilt, but I just feel like if someone didn't tell me, I'd be upset. So I have to like tell people if there's something wrong with the way they look, like teeth or like I don't know, like flies
Bogey.
unzipped.
Yeah, I do. It's a tricky one, isn't it? When how honest can you be, and then people getting offended by things.
I feel like you're saving them. Like I don't know, like I had blood on when I was waitressing way long ago in New York City. I had blood showing, and a girl pulled me aside and was like, "You need to go to the bathroom." And I was like so grateful. Like if no one had told me that, I'd just be mortified all day long once I realized it.
Yeah, but would a guy have mentioned that? I wonder if a guy would have.
I don't think so, and I think that's understandable.
Yeah, there was a video at exercise done recently. Or I remember seeing a video of a woman who had blood on her trousers. You know, one of these like setups on the street to see who would stop. Um, and I don't remember what the outcome was, but that has definitely been an experiment.
I
Um,
feel like a man would be more likely to tell the woman he was with or the female he was with to tell the woman than to do it himself. Just because of like social boundaries and social graces. Like a man knows that he can't relate to that situation. Like you'd feel much safer and more comfortable hearing that from a female. I would hearing the situation from a woman.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that's what's you know, that I don't know whether we should get into the whole toilet thing, but when people discuss the idea of males in women's toilet, and they're like, oh, but it's safer and all that, the focus is always on safety. But what is missed is the idea that you can be vulnerable in a women's toilet with other women in a way that a male won't necessarily, however he feels inside, identifies. I just don't feel you can have, like, let's say I went to the toilet and like my example is like if I'm sobbing, like I've messed up a job interview or something, and I went into the ladies' toilet sobbing. I'm trying to find something that is not a gendered thing, like it's not period pains. It's just you feel like upset and you want to go off somewhere. I would feel more comfortable having a hug from a strange woman who is like,
Mhm.
oh my god, that's so shit. Here, have a tissue, than than even a than a male. Then I just, even if they were very well presenting as a, I just would, and I don't know what quite why that would be, but you just it's very interesting to me. There was a video going around recently of a female who presents as a male, and they were talking about how they are missing that camaraderie that they had when they presented as female, as a woman. Did you see that video?
Mm-mm. Oh, yes, yes, I did actually. The one, yeah, who being a man is lonely.
Yes, that's the one. And I thought it's something that a few people I've met, some detransitioners, have said. There's a real difference in how men treat other men, and and it's something that you, because you know we're so used to like women only like being around other women, we don't realize how men don't share the same way with each other. And um, I do wonder sometimes if that's a social thing or a natural, you know, like
I think it's
biology.
probably a mix of both.
Most of these things are.
Yeah. Like there's
And
something biological about women being more nurturing and stuff that's just we're not going to escape because our body's designed to give in a different way.
yeah, this is what I chatted to on the other, chatted about on the other podcast, because I I am nurturing, but I would be a really crap nurse. I'm not good around sick people. And then
Well,
I'm like,
nurses have I mean, they're bulletproof. They're brave. There's like that's a different level of
I didn't mean
that's like
literally.
a different level of power.
I didn't mean literally a nurse. I mean,
Oh.
when I've got a boyfriend who's not well,
Oh.
I feel like a bit impatient, and I'm not someone who will just go and make chicken soup for hours and sit there with them patiently, like here, honey, I'll feed you your chicken soup. That doesn't come naturally to me, whereas it does to my kid's dad. And then you could be like, oh, but being nurturing in that way and making chicken soup for 3 hours, that's a feminine thing, and women are better at doing that. Well, I don't tick that woman box where I can feed someone. I mean, I'm sure if I really had to, I could do
I
that.
mean, I don't tick the cook woman box. I learned that I can be a good cook in the pandemic, but as soon as I don't have to be, I don't.
Oh, I'd always rather go out.
Yeah.
If I don't have to do the dishes and I don't have to
It's the dishes, it's the cleanup afterwards. That is exactly why I can't stand doing it.
yeah. So I'm looking for a man who can cook, who wears makeup, who has long hair, who's up for spontaneously unicycling. And of course, I'm going to find them.
Naked unicycling, specifically.
There can be other naked activities. It doesn't have to be unicycling. Paragliding. Who's done that before? Anyone? I don't know. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Is it Sarah naked paragliding with her?
I think
This is
this is going to be your dating advertisement.
Pardon?
You should just take clips of this and put it on your Bumble. You can do videos now, right? On those. You're like, this is what I'm looking for.
I kind of think I'm going to just spontaneously meet someone in it. I always like that idea of randomly meeting someone. So I'm trying to like go to more comedy events because I think those are the places I might meet someone. And there's a thing coming up in a few weeks with cancelled comedians in London.
Ooh, I bet that will be fun.
Yeah, so Graham Linehan and Andrew Doyle.
I'm so jealous. I want to be able to go. This sounds amazing.
And some other comedians, and I just think that those are the places that I am likely maybe to meet. Well, I don't know. We'll all be busy sitting in the audience, just being quiet. But
Well, you can talk afterwards, though.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm very, very curious about comedians who push boundaries. I went to the Edinburgh Fringe last year, and I saw Nina Conti, who you might have, ventriloquist.
I don't know anything about ventriloquists.
Oh, okay. So
I know what it is, but I don't know any ones that are doing it now.
She's like one of the most famous ones. And then I also saw another ventriloquist who the puppet was making like the whole thing was about racism and apartheid, and a South African comedian ventriloquist. And it wasn't necessarily that funny because we didn't understand the whole political context. So it was a slightly lost on the audience. But I thought using ventriloquism in such a clever way, like it was very clever, I think. And I think that's what, like, I'm so interested in trying to do that. It's much harder than drawing, I reckon.
I mean, it's a different skill set. I wouldn't say harder. I mean, creating the work that you create, art like the paintings you create, it's very difficult. It's not difficult for you anymore because you honed that talent. But
yeah, I mean, it's a new challenge for me, for
yeah,
sure. And it's one thing to be spontaneously funny in a conversation, but to have a script and then remember it and connect with the audience. Like that's the most fascinating thing about ventriloquism is it's a three-way dynamic because you've got you and then the puppet, which can represent your inner psyche and can say the things that you can't say or you shouldn't say. And then you've got the puppet's dynamic with the audience and your dynamic with the audience. And what's fascinating about that is I've studied to become a therapist, and I was going to be a relationship or sex therapist at one point, and they said it's so difficult because you've got a three-way dynamic between the couple and the therapist. So there's the therapist and the one half of the couple and then the other half and then the dynamic between them, and that three-way connection is what really fascinates me with ventriloquism. I mean, watch this space. I really
That's
want to.
really interesting because then you also kind of have the straight man and funny man dynamic. And then there's always a rule of thirds in comedy. So that's really interesting. Because like that's how jokes work. There's like it always happens on the third beat, like when you're writing comedy. So that's really I never thought about well, I haven't done a lot of thinking about ventriloquism at all. But that's really that's interesting to me how that three plays in even with that. There's like that rule of three in comedy that and the rule of like opposites.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I probably made a mistake because Gender Brenda has blue hair and a rainbow body, and I need someone who's more the opposite of me. But then I worked out that would just be an old man, like a conservative old man. And most
I mean,
ventriloquists,
she could be just the naughty version of you, or like, your alter ego.
but it should be yeah. But I'm already pretty naughty myself. I think I need someone much more like don't be. I haven't
Oh,
worked it out.
okay.
I
Okay.
also think I could have some kind of alien. I think I would quite like that. Um, who's visiting Earth and finds
I
everything
like this. Yeah, I think this is great. Go with
and
that. Run with that.
yeah, and then they're just confused and they're like, "You're saying people identify as cats?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's, it's totally normal, don't you
I
think?"
saw, I think, I can't remember. There was one, I think it's a conservative comedy. Maybe it was the Babylon Bee, but they did something sort of like that where like they talked about all the different genders and then eventually the aliens like there's no signs of intelligent life on Earth.
Was it like in a boardroom?
Yes.
Oh yes, I saw that. That was funny. Yeah, things like that I find really fascinating. To like, is it this idea of is it offensive, and who like the whole Ricky Gervais. I'm sure you've come across him.
Oh,
The whole
I mean, stand up is my therapy. So I
yeah.
love
So
that and I do think it's not, it takes the biggest balls, or whatever that euphemism, but like it takes the biggest, like it's the scariest thing to do performing wise, comedy is. So in that way, it's the hardest, I think, because if you fail alone and on your face. Like it's just you in the audience.
I did a stand-up comedy course in London and then performed in front of 100 people, which for me was a really big deal. And then I got pregnant and it was too difficult to go out late at night pregnant. So now I'm trying to work out, well, I can't start going out to gigs all the time, but I can use social media in some way. And I'm also quite involved in free speech and where is the line and why is there a line and should there be a line in free speech. That fascinates me. um, and yeah, the right to offend, the right to be offended, all of these topics. And so free speech and comedy is where I'm going to go in the future and explore that um, a bit. Yeah, so I'm going to carry on with my portrait series, but I'm too much of an extrovert to just want to be in my studio drawing. um, and it is fun to make people laugh. I feel like that's what's missing in this whole like on Twitter. There's an oh, look at this creepy person. Look at this ridiculous person with their blue hair, or whatever. But like thoughtful, clever comedy, there could be more. Not just like taking the piss. There's a lot of like taking the easy digs, let's say, like a meme or something. Um,
Like
but I
social
think
commentary comedy, that's my favorite form. It's like lowers my blood pressure, but I don't think it's a coincidence that of the three people basically that are willing to be gender critical, two of them are comedians, like Dave Chappelle, Ricky Gervais, J.K. Rowling.
yeah, well, and Graham Linehan
Oh
is a
yeah, yeah, yeah,
comedy writer. Yeah, so I do find all of that is, and Andrew Doyle is a satirist, so he's the presenter on GB News.
yeah.
I'm sure you've come across him.
Yes.
He just started following me on Twitter. I was excited.
Ooh, look at you. That's exciting.
This is the beginning of me conquering Twitter. Yeah, so that's the direction that I'm planning to go in. I think gender critical ventriloquist. I mean, I don't know. I think I call myself more a gender atheist or gender like the that those phrases are weird, aren't they? Like
No, gender
I,
atheist makes perfect sense. Gender abolitionist.
yeah, that's the other one. As soon as you say gender critical, people make so many assumptions and make it sound so negative. It's like, well, I'm just questioning this whole concept of a gendered soul, and it's good to question that, don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, it really feels like a belief system, and we should be. It should be fine to say, well, you can believe that. I don't believe it. Okay.
Yeah.
But then, you know, it affects laws, and then it becomes very complicated.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not live and let live. It's very much top-down societal structural change that people are being forced to participate in.
Yeah, yeah, it is tricky. It's much worse in America, I know. But
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, well, yes and no, because our free speech is the most protected speech in the world. Our First Amendment is the most broadest protection of free speech. And we don't have people being arrested or visited by police for wrong speak like is happening in the UK and Norway and things like that. So in that way, it's better.
but
Um,
the laws are quite worrying over there, I think. Like I mean in Canada, I know that
well,
children can
Canada's much worse than the US, like a long shot worse.
but isn't it in California now where if you don't affirm your child, they could take the child?
Yes, and that is directly in violation of the 14th Amendment. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out. Um, I think the Supreme Court's going to knock it down because I can't remember the amendment that also goes against it. Like you're not allowed to override other states' laws, and so that's happening. And then you also see some states trying to penalize out of state abortion. So if you take someone to get an abortion in a different state, but that's also unconstitutional. We're not allowed, like it's against the Constitution to dictate what goes on in another state. So states' rights are supposed to override that. So like California can't constitutionally say that um that you the can't override the banning of gender transition whatever in another state. And we have parental rights. So it is, I think those are all going to get overturned with this SCOTUS, but it is going to take time and it is going to be a lot of, it's going to cause a lot of damage before it gets overruled or overturned. But
Yeah,
California is a mess, and it's very much basically California is our Canada.
yeah. And you know, I'm part of an exhibition in San Francisco opening in 2 weeks' time. So that's going to be, I wish I could be there. I can't be there. But that feels, apart from having something in Portland, Oregon, I think San Francisco is a close second, or in terms of the
Yeah.
whole stuff.
Well, what's really interesting is that San Francisco and Portland probably rival being the most like far left cities, but San Francisco just like a year and a half ago ousted their whole liberal education board and installed a conservative one, which is fascinating to see how like other things are going to play out.
Wait, San
It,
Francisco did that?
mhm.
Oh,
Yeah,
is
so it's fascinating.
I don't
This
know what.
culture war is going to. Sorry, go ahead.
Where do you get your news and your information? Is it at one particular place I should be following?
No, I'm just kind of a news junkie. So a lot of I find a lot of it on Twitter and then I jump off from Twitter and go, but I and look more into a topic. But a lot of it's just I look at the trending news every day. I look at the trends every day. And I do look at headlines, but I'm less inclined to read like I'll read the New York Times, I'll read the Washington Post, I'll also read Fox News. Um, I also read the Wall Street Journal when I have enough free articles and things like that. But it was I used to be not anti Twitter, but I wasn't really on Twitter, even though I had an account, and I realized how much information I was missing because of that. And I didn't know that like I was trying to figure out the truth of the gender medicine stuff, and it was impossible just by Googling and reading the news sources I had, because it was before, this was like 2019, 2020, 2021, before like the mainstream media was even talking about it at all. So Twitter was a big, is all has turned into a big jumping off point for me getting my information. And I won't rely on Twitter as factual, but I will take whatever interesting topic I find and then Google search that. And a lot of it has also come from overseas news sources too.
But it's very tricky with Twitter to see the opposing viewpoints, because I just get blocked by a bunch of people. So I'm very aware that Twitter is not, I might only be seeing things that support some of my views. So I'm always curious to be challenged, like to just see, like, I went to a talk by a neuroscientist about, it's called The Mosaic Brain, about how we have masculine and feminine parts. And, the whole brain scan, like, can you tell if someone's true trans by scanning their brain? Show me some evidence, challenge me. I'm fine with that. It's a shame that it doesn't work the other way around. So they are so convinced that they're right, some of the trans activists, that they won't really take on board, like the whole puberty blockers thing, and how there's detrimental effects. It's like, that's so obvious and common knowledge. Why
Yeah,
aren't they?
the narrative that it's reversible just seems absurd to me now, but I tried to believe it. Um,
Going through a second puberty, like if you are female and you go on testosterone, you're going through male puberty, I think is a misnomer. Is that the phrase? It's not a male puberty. Your penis isn't going to grow, and you're not going through a male puberty. You're going through a sort of hybrid situation.
you're
um
poisoning your body. You get a larger clitoris, but your vagina atrophies. You'll
yeah,
eventually need to get a hysterectomy. Yeah.
yeah, I've had people in my art series who who have had to have a hysterectomy because they were told that it's getting so risky, and then they're just stuck on in a tricky situation for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
So I think it's a tricky one. I mean, the one thing I always ask myself is, there are some people with gender dysphoria who do seem happier having gone through the process of taking all the hormones. And then there's are they genuinely happier? They say they're happier. I've heard that people can convince themselves that it was the right thing, even if at the end of the day it wasn't, because they've made all these major changes. Is that cognitive dissonance? I think it is, where it's too
It's
enormous.
denial and cognitive dissonance, I think.
Yeah, it's too enormous to be like, oh my God, what have I done? So then they're like, well, this is what I've done, and I need to be really okay with that.
Yeah.
So it's something that I do think about, and I do ask the detransitioners who I'm in touch with, what they think about the idea of true trans. I mean, there's such a mixture within the people I've painted as well, the people who, um, uh,
Well, as you said, there's some people that are still close to the community, which kind of surprises me. So I was going to ask about that too. Like, if you felt like if some people that are still kind of in the community, if their detransition hasn't ostracized them at all.
well, I think two of those people are the ones who've dropped out. So that says something.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I feel strongly about I'm glad they were part of the series. I still think it's worth including all the different viewpoints. I just think that I guess I could be seen as a bit of a hot potato. It's so frustrating because I could be like, J.K. Rowling commented on my art, but then if you have these negative views of her, then you don't want to be associated with me because of her. And then, you know, Buck Angel knows about my work. Some feminists really don't like Buck Angel. So the fact that I've been in contact with Buck Angel, people would not like me because of that. And this is what I mean about being in this weird middle where damned if you do and damned if you don't.
I think
And
as an artist, you just have to say fuck it and be true to you and let the
yeah.
chips fall where they may, because you can't control people's reactions.
Oh, I know, but the artists who I'm surrounded by are really focus, like I was gonna say hardline, it's not quite, they're really like, those men are fetishists who you know, the whole AGP thing, and they should just F off and all this. But I'm the one saying, it's so interesting, like where has all of this come from? Let's unpick it and find out. And I met someone, like the whole difference between someone who's transsexual and transgender, and how does the transsexual feel compared to someone who's transgender. And you know, there are trans people who don't like Buck Angel because Buck says I'm female and I don't, if you use she, whatever, this is how I live and how I want to present myself. And there's just so much division. And I think let's just put people in a room to have a chat and try and be really honest with each other. And we might learn more than just dismissing. I'm not someone who dismisses, like, oh, I just don't want to know. I
You're
just,
curious about the nuance of things.
yeah, but I also do, I like reality based conversations. So I appreciate when Buck Angel says I'm female, and if you use she, whatever, um, transsexuals seem to be like, you know what, I'm a woman, but I prefer to present as a man, or the other way around. And they don't try and convince us that they have a gendered soul. They're like, I didn't like my body. I didn't like presenting to the world the way that I was. And they acknowledge quite often that it's a psychological issue. And this was their way of dealing with it. And
Yeah,
that actually feels quite healthy
fair.
and on some
Well, at least
health.
they have a grasp on reality, but they're also not trying to change you or the society, which I think is the clincher.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine with living that live. I'll have all, I mean, personally, I don't think it's possible to be truly happy if you're dishonest with yourself. Um, but that's my opinion, and it holds no bearing on someone else or how they live their life. As long as they're not telling me how to think, they can, or telling me that they have to invade my space or anything, or they're not compelling children or trying to indoctrinate children. Do
Yeah.
whatever you want.
And one thing that I've asked, yeah, I agree. And another thing that I've asked some of the women in my series, and I've said, did you at any point really think you were a boy or a man? Did you actually think that? And I haven't asked that many people, but I'm always like, is it okay if I ask that? Like, were they so in that mindset that they are a man? And none of them have said, oh yeah, I totally thought I was a man trapped in a woman's body. They have said they felt like a trans man. So that was an interesting nuance. And they also said it was such a massive effort to act like a man. And it was exhausting to try and pass and to not, and the stress of like, at what point is it okay to use the men's toilet? Is someone going to find out and realize that they are female? And the sort of the effort. We always think that, oh, life gets easier, like, oh, you're transitioning, you take the hormones, you have the surgery, and you pass, and you're your authentic self. But presumably, if you are being authentic, it should be less effort to be yourself,
Mhm.
not make it doing this whole like, am I being man enough if I sit like this, or is this a little bit of a feminine way of sitting? And don't you think? I think if
Oh
you're
yeah,
being,
absolutely.
because
If you
then,
have to like, if you have to put on a costume before you leave the house to be your authentic self, there's nothing authentic about that.
yeah. So I do find that, yeah, I find that interesting. And then of course, just one more thing, I should probably go and have my dinner soon. Um, some of the people in my series, they ticked all the criteria for true trans, and I find that so interesting because there's always the argument like, oh, if you detransition, you were never really trans. Uh, but these other people are actually trans because they've stuck with it. And it's like, yeah, but when they were in the middle of this 7 year period or whatever it was when they identified as trans, in that moment, they were true trans. So then what does that really mean if they later detransitioned? Then what is true trans if you do it for 10 years, if you do it for 20 years?
I find it
Um,
interesting that you said 7 years. Was that, did you notice that as an average, or is that just a number you picked out right now? Because like the 7 to 10 year mark is supposed to be the
yeah,
regret period.
yeah, it is. I find that's, I suppose that's, I think, I don't know why it is 7 years. I don't know if that's when the side effects start to kick in, or it could be when your brain reaches maturity. Could it be that it's like between eight, 15 to 20 is when you are in that like mindset, and then it's when you're about age 27, 25 to 27. It might be, but it's a combination. I reckon it's when the all the medication and you just get worn down with it all.
Yeah, and it's just you've gone through all like the, because I, from what I can gather, it's very much an addiction too. And you're going and you're always going on to the next thing, and this is going to be what makes you truly happy, and the next thing, and then you kind of exhaust your options
Yeah,
in
and
that 7 to 10 year mark.
there's also the 7 year itch in relationships, isn't there? So there might be
Yeah.
something about the number seven, um,
Um,
or
I know you
something
have to
like.
jump off, but I do like to end these conversations with what you would say to someone to encourage them to speak out, or who might be afraid to start speaking out on this issue, what you would say to encourage them that it's important to start, or now is the time.
I think I'm very much in favor of the sort of awkward women speaking out, and that we need to. Ah, that's such a tricky one. I have a podcast and I ask a similar question at the end of
Really?
that. It's called the Sex Manifesto, and I'm like, what would you put in the Sex Manifesto? But
Oh, I
anyway,
like that.
so what would I say to someone who's afraid to speak out? Um, I don't want to use the word valid. It's so cheesy, like, oh, your experiences are valid. I think it's really important for more women to be visible who don't fit in. And I mean, I still struggle to find my tribe, and I think they're out there. One of the hardest things for me is when I was saying I was genderqueer and I joined like a genderqueer non-binary support group on Facebook. There were so many people in that group who I related to, and we shared experiences, and I was like, yes, yes, that's how I feel. Those are the people that we need to somehow, for them to accept that I'm a woman. I feel super awkward about this, and this, but I totally accept that I'm a woman, and it's okay to if to like what you like and to dress, and not just women, men. Like, God, I wish there was more of a space for these like softly spoken, sweet, uh, you know, go and chop a tree, but also like butterflies. I mean, men are not. When did you last have a man say, "Oh, I love glitter and butterflies," like a straight man? Why? Why can't they admit they like? Who doesn't like
Yeah.
glitter? It's kind of okay. It's a bit annoying, but it's like what? It's so ridiculous that it's not a manly thing for a man to say. I mean, maybe I'm showing a lot of, I don't know. It just,
No, I get what you're saying. That there's there's uh, a lack of representation for both sexes to be non-conforming and still be who you are.
yeah. And it's not like, oh, if you wear a suit, you're being masculine. You're a woman in a suit. It's
Yeah.
just, you're just a woman in a suit. And
Yeah.
I actually wish that fashion was way more, you know, I'm going to end on a controversial point. So, you know, Alok, who is
Elope?
controversial. Maybe I shouldn't mention Alok. I'm thinking of people, not necessarily this Alok person, but there are men out there who wear crazy makeup and dresses, and they're all saying they're non-binary. Let's have more men in makeup who just say, you know, like we did in the
I'm a
80s.
man. Yeah.
It's so annoying, and they lose authority. Like if a man went to work in mascara, there would, even in this day and age, there would be whisperings and forget that I mentioned Alok. Um, they would lose some authority. Like I have this person who I was friends with who's a cross-dresser, and he said his favorite item of clothing is a soft pink sweater, but he's a middle manager and he can't go to work in a soft pink sweater because he would lose authority. I mean, that's bullshit. That should
Yeah.
let him wear the bloody sweater. And
Yeah.
um, things like that irritate me. Sorry, I went off on a total tangent.
No, that's
Uh,
okay.
but yeah, more.
I mean, yeah, so you think it's important to speak out so that there's more diversity of voices, so it's okay to be that, to not fit perfectly in a box and that you're still a man or you're still a woman. If I'm
Yeah,
gathering, if I'm gleaning.
I always I always say we need to redefine what it means to be a woman, but of course that phrase can be twisted into, well, we are redefining it because males can be women. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
Female woman can mean, I don't even like saying female woman because it sounds ridiculous, but
An
women,
adult, a
women,
woman can be anything and still be a woman.
yes. And it's so just my art series is very a very specific cultural demographic as well, and I find that super interesting. Um,
Speak more on that real quick.
so it's like 99.9% Caucasian white.
I was
Um,
thinking that's what you were gonna say.
yeah, and I just think
What about
super.
economic position? Like mostly
Well,
middle class?
I don't know that, but I do know that in the UK, there's a huge issue with kids in the foster care system who are identifying as trans. So in the UK, at least, it is not necessarily based on
Economics.
socioeconomic. I think I can imagine that those kids in the foster care system are lacking a family or community, a sense of community or family. And so, you know, there's this lovely, welcoming rainbow family, and they feel very loved and cared for. So
They're also
that's,
more likely to be sexually abused.
oh yeah, there's also that side of things. Um, but it has been quite eye-opening. And I did hold a Twitter space, or I entered one, I spoke in a Twitter space recently, and there were people all around the world, some people from Africa and uh, where was it? Not India, but like all over the world. And then I was asking, like, what's the situation in Nigeria? Like, is this a thing? And it's so interesting to hear that it's not really a thing in some of those other countries. And you think if it was like a natural, sorry, natural, I don't know if that's the right word. Like if it was like autism or something like that, then that would be universal and it would appear regardless of cultural circumstances. But it doesn't seem to be like that.
No, definitely not.
There's a lot more
Yeah,
to
there's a
um,
lot more to unpack with that, and I don't want to take up all your time, but yeah. I mean, that's why it's so interesting 'cause it's like a first world problem in a way, but then you'll see that like for example, what you said, foster children are susceptible to it. So it's happening to the most vulnerable in the first world in a lot of ways. And then you can speak on the individualism of more Western societies as well versus like um more of holistic uh
the whole village.
ideologies. Yes.
Yeah, like a very traditional family environment where people are not exposed to the idea that they could break out of the social structures.
Yeah.
There's, yeah, there is. there is also that. It is all very there's a lot to unpack, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. Enjoy your
Cool.
dinner.
Cool. Yeah. Speak to you soon. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. I'll
Okay.
talk to you
Bye.
soon. Bye.